Have you ever wondered why, even when you do everything right, life still finds a way to knock you down? Why that promotion you clearly deserved went to someone else? Why the relationship you invested so much in ended in disappointment? Why, just when everything seemed to be falling into place, something went wrong? If you're watching this video right now, chances are you've been through something like this. And I have a revelation for you, one that could completely change the way you see these situations. But before we get to the most powerful answer, the one ancient philosophers guarded as the ultimate secret of human transformation, you need to understand something fundamental about the nature of suffering. The truth is, you're not alone on this journey of pain and questioning. Millions of people around the world wake up every single day asking the same thing. Why is life so hard? Why me? And here's what's most intriguing. The greatest thinkers in history, the ones who shaped entire civilizations, asked those exact same questions. The difference is that they found answers that transformed not only their own lives, but humanity itself. So if you want to discover how to become unrecognizable in 2026, how to turn every obstacle into an opportunity for growth, and, most importantly, how to finally understand why bad things happen to good people, then you're in the right place. And please, make sure you watch until the end, because the final revelation I'll share in the last few minutes is so powerful that it has the potential to free you from years of unnecessary suffering. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because the content we're about to explore together can literally change the direction of your life. And trust me, you're going to want access to the upcoming videos we'll be releasing on this topic. Let's start with a true story from over 2,000 years ago, one that could just as easily have happened yesterday to any of us. Imagine a man who had everything: power, wealth, influence. He was considered one of the greatest emperors to ever rule Rome. His name was Marcus Aurelius, and he quite literally had the world at his feet. But do you know what he wrote in his private journals? He wrote about pain, about loss, about the feeling of being constantly tested by life. He lost several children, faced betrayal, endured devastating wars, and ruled during plagues that killed millions of people. Now pause and think about this. If even a Roman emperor, with all the power in the world at his disposal, wasn't immune to suffering, what does that tell us about the nature of life? Is there anyone special, anyone chosen, who simply escapes hardship? The answer is no, and Marcus Aurelius discovered something extraordinary through suffering itself. He realized that the question shouldn't be, why do bad things happen, but rather, what are they happening for? Do you see the difference? When you ask why, you step into the role of the victim. You're saying, the universe is against me, life is unfair, I don't deserve this. But when you ask what for, you take control. You become the protagonist of your own story. You begin to see every challenge as an opportunity to grow stronger, to evolve, to transform into a better version of yourself. That's exactly what the Stoic philosophers taught. They didn't deny suffering. They didn't pretend life was easy or fair. On the contrary, they looked pain straight in the eye and said, "This is my fuel for greatness. This is what will make me unrecognizable." But let me take this even deeper. The Stoics believed there was a higher intelligence governing the universe. Some called it God, others called it nature, others called it the Logos. The name matters far less than the idea itself. This intelligence isn't cruel or kind in a human sense. It simply is. And everything that happens does so for a reason, as part of a larger order. One our limited minds can't always understand in the moment. Think of it this way. Have you ever tried to explain to a 3-year-old why they need a shot? To them, you seem cruel. You're allowing something painful to happen, but you know that momentary pain is protecting them from something far worse. You can see the full picture that they can't yet grasp. In the same way, there are forces and reasons at work in your life that you may not yet be able to fully understand, but that doesn't mean there's no purpose. Seneca, another great Stoic thinker, said something revolutionary. Difficulties strengthen the mind, just as labor strengthens the body. When you go to the gym and lift weights, your muscles experience tiny tears. It looks destructive, doesn't it? But it's precisely through those micro tears that your muscles rebuild themselves stronger. Suffering is the weight that trains your soul. Now you might be thinking, but what about truly horrible situations? What about devastating losses? How can there be purpose in that? And I completely understand that objection. But let me ask you this. Do you know anyone who went through something incredibly difficult and came out of it exactly the same person? I doubt it. People either break completely or they transform into something extraordinary, and the difference between those two outcomes comes down to one single choice, the choice of how you interpret what's happening to you. Epictetus was one of the most influential Stoic philosophers in history, and his life is living proof of the power of this philosophy. He was born a slave. You heard that right? A slave. He had no freedom, no rights, and virtually no control over his life. And during his enslavement, his owner deliberately broke his leg, leaving him permanently disabled. If anyone ever had a reason to ask why bad things happen to good people, that person was Epictetus. But do you know what he did? He turned his physical prison into mental freedom. He realized something most people spend their entire lives trying to understand. If they ever do, no one can imprison your mind. No one can control your thoughts, your inner choices, or the way you interpret events. Even in chains, he was free where it truly mattered. And eventually, he gained his physical freedom as well, becoming one of the most respected teachers in Rome, with emperors and powerful figures seeking his wisdom. His message was crystal clear. There are things within your control, and there are things outside of it. Suffering is born when you try to control what cannot be controlled. You can't control whether you'll lose your job. You can't control whether someone will betray you. You can't control whether you'll get sick, but you can control how you respond to all of it. And in that response lies all your power. Think about all the times you suffered trying to change something external, trying to make someone love you, trying to force a specific outcome, trying to control what people think of you. How much time and energy did you waste on that? Now imagine if you had redirected all that energy toward what you actually can control. Your thoughts, your actions, your character, your choices. If you're still with me, and this is resonating with you, hit the like button on this video. It helps me know this content is reaching the right people, and it motivates me to keep bringing this ancient wisdom to you. But let's go deeper. Why does God, or the universe, or whatever you choose to call it, allow bad things to happen? The Stoics had a fascinating answer. They believed the universe isn't trying to punish you, it's trying to prepare you. Every obstacle is a test, not of punishment, but of strengthening. It's as if life is constantly asking, are you ready for the next level? Have you developed the inner strength required? Marcus Aurelius wrote something in Meditations that permanently changed my perspective. He said, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Do you grasp the depth of that? The obstacle itself is the path. It's not something you need to remove before you start living. It's through it that you live, grow, and transform. Imagine you're climbing a mountain. The rocks, the steep incline, the thin air, all of it seems to be working against you. But it's precisely that resistance that makes you stronger. If you could simply appear at the top without effort, would you be the same person? Would the victory feel the same? Would you have built the same strength, resilience, and confidence? Of course not. Life works exactly the same way. And when you truly understand this, not just intellectually, but deep in your core, something powerful happens. You stop being a victim of circumstances and become the architect of your own destiny. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what can I learn from this? How can I grow through this? Who can I become because of this? Here's something most people don't realize. When you change this perspective, you literally change your brain chemistry. Modern neuroscience confirms what the Stoics intuitively understood thousands of years ago. When you reinterpret a stressful event as a challenge instead of a threat, your body responds differently. Cortisol levels drop. Cognitive capacity increases. You access parts of your brain responsible for creative problem solving. You quite literally become smarter, stronger, and more capable. The Stoics also taught something called Amor Fati, which means love of fate. It's not just accepting what happens to you. It's fully embracing it, loving every part of your journey, including the difficult parts, because without the hard parts, you wouldn't be who you are. Every scar tells a story. Every battle won reveals a strength you didn't know you had. Friedrich Nietzsche, although not a Stoic, captured this essence perfectly when he said, "What doesn't kill me makes me stronger." But the Stoics would go even further. What doesn't kill me is specifically designed to make me stronger. It's not an accident. It's not random. It's part of an intelligent process of transformation. So when something bad happens in your life, you have two choices. You can ask, "Why me?" Sink into self-pity and become bitter and resentful. Or you can ask, "What is this for? What lesson do I need to learn? What strength do I need to develop? What character must I forge?" The first choice makes you smaller. The second makes you unrecognizable from how deeply transformed you become. Look around you. All the people you truly admire, the ones who achieved something meaningful, who changed the world in some way, have one thing in common. They went through personal hells and chose to use those experiences as fuel instead of excuses. They understood that suffering wasn't the end of the story, but the medium through which the real story could be written. Do you want to become unrecognizable in 2026? Then you need to embrace the challenges that are coming, because they will come. Life isn't suddenly going to get easy, but you can become strong enough that nothing feels impossible anymore. Now let me tell you about a Stoic concept that will completely change the way you see life once you truly understand it. The Stoics called it Premeditatio Malorum, which means the premeditation of evils. Before you assume this is just negative thinking, let me explain what it really means and why it's one of the most powerful tools for personal transformation. Seneca used to spend time every day imagining the worst things that could happen to him. He imagined losing his wealth, losing his friends, losing his health, even facing death. Sounds morbid, right? But there was a brilliant method behind it. When you mentally anticipate adversity, when you rehearse how you would respond to it, two extraordinary things happen. First, if and when those things actually occur, you're not caught off guard. You've already processed the possibility emotionally. You've already thought through how you'd respond. It's like an athlete visualizing every possible scenario before a competition. When the real moment arrives, they've already been there mentally dozens of times. Second, and this might be even more important, you realize something profound. You can survive these things. In your imagination, you lose everything, and yet you still exist. You can still find meaning. You can still rebuild. And here's the key. Most people live in constant fear precisely because they've never faced their fears head-on. They run, they avoid, they distract themselves. But fear that's never confronted grows in the shadows. When you look directly at your worst-case scenarios and realize you can handle them, you free yourself. You stop living as a hostage to circumstances. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily. Even as an emperor, he constantly reminded himself that everything was temporary. His power, his status, his life. This didn't make him depressed. On the contrary, it made him present. It made him grateful. It kept him focused on what truly mattered, living with virtue, acting with courage, and contributing while he could. And that's exactly what you need to do if you want to become unrecognizable. You need to stop pretending that bad things won't happen. They will. You'll face rejection, loss, failure, disappointment. But when you accept that, when you prepare for it mentally, when you develop the inner strength to deal with it, you become unstoppable. Not because nothing bad happens to you, but because nothing bad can destroy you. Think about people who completely fall apart when they lose their job. Why does that happen? Because they never considered the possibility. They built their entire identity and sense of security around that job. When it disappears, they collapse. Now think about someone who practices Premeditatio Malorum. They've already imagined losing their job. They've already thought, okay, if this happens, I have skills, I have experience, I can start over, I can reinvent myself. When it actually happens, they don't panic, they act. This doesn't mean you won't feel emotions. The Stoics weren't robots. They felt sadness, frustration, even anger, but they didn't let those emotions control them. They acknowledged them, processed them, and then consciously chose how to respond. And that's the difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is automatic, impulsive, often destructive. Responding is intentional, deliberate, and constructive. Epictetus had a fascinating exercise for this. Whenever something valuable crossed his path, a person he loved, an object he appreciated, he reminded himself, this isn't mine forever. It can be taken from me at any moment. That didn't stop him from loving or appreciating it. In fact, it did the opposite. It made him value each moment more deeply because he understood the temporary nature of all things. Have you noticed how people often only recognize the value of something once it's gone? Health when they get sick, a relationship when it ends, a job when they're laid off. The Stoics flipped that perspective. They appreciated everything deeply because they were always aware it might not be there tomorrow. That's not pessimism. It's one of the most realistic and liberating ways to see life. Here's another powerful realization. When you stop being afraid of losing things, you stop being controlled by them. You stop tolerating abusive situations because you're afraid of being alone. You stop staying in soul-crushing jobs because you're afraid of financial insecurity. You stop staying silent in the face of injustice because you're afraid of what others might think. You become truly free. The Stoics understood that real freedom doesn't come from having more things, more money, or more power. It comes from needing less. It comes from being so internally strong that external circumstances lose their grip on you. And that strength is built precisely through the adversity you face. Do you know the greatest paradox of Stoicism? When you accept that bad things will happen, when you prepare for them, when you develop the ability to deal with them, your life actually improves dramatically. You make bolder decisions because you're not afraid of failure. You form more authentic relationships because you're not afraid of rejection. You pursue your dreams more fiercely because you're not afraid of judgment. That's where real transformation happens. When fear is no longer the driving force behind your decisions, when you act based on values instead of fear, when you choose growth over comfort, you become a completely different person. You become unrecognizable. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That single sentence is worth more than entire libraries of shallow self-help books. Because it puts you where you belong, in control of your thoughts, your interpretations, and your responses. And that's where all real power lives. So when something bad happens in your life, and it will, remember this. You don't control the event itself, but you have total control over how you interpret it and how you respond to it. And in that choice, you define who you are and who you're going to become. There's a fascinating story that the Stoic masters used to tell to illustrate a crucial lesson about how we should face life's events. One day a farmer's horse ran away. His neighbors came to him and said, "What terrible luck!" And the farmer simply replied, "Maybe." The next day the horse returned, bringing with it a herd of wild horses. The neighbors exclaimed, "What incredible luck!" And again the farmer replied, "Maybe." Dildul. On the third day, the farmer's son tried to tame one of the wild horses and broke his leg. The neighbors lamented, "What a tragedy." And the farmer said, "Maybe." A week later, military officers arrived at the village, drafting young men for war. But the son was exempt because of his broken leg. The neighbors celebrated, "What a blessing!" And the farmer, wise as ever, said, "Maybe." Do you understand the depth of this story? The farmer understood something that most people take decades to learn, if they ever learn it at all. He understood that you never truly know the meaning of an event at the moment it happens. What seems like the worst thing in the world may be exactly what you needed, and what seems like the best thing may lead you down a destructive path. How many times have you looked back on your life and realized that a painful rejection saved you from a toxic relationship, that a professional failure forced you to discover your true calling, that a financial crisis taught you lessons about money you never would have learned otherwise? The Stoics knew this. They understood that the universe operates on timescales and levels of complexity that our limited minds can't fully process. That's why they practiced something revolutionary: suspension of judgment. When something seemingly bad happened, they didn't rush to label it a catastrophe. They simply observed, accepted, and asked, "What can I do with this situation right now? How can I use this to my advantage? What opportunity is hidden inside this challenge?" And here's something that can completely change your perspective. The Stoics believed that everything that happens is exactly what should happen. Not because there's some fixed, unchangeable destiny, but because the universe operates according to precise, natural laws: cause and effect, action and reaction. You are exactly where your past choices have led you, and your present choices will determine where you'll be tomorrow. This is incredibly liberating when you truly internalize it. It means you are not a victim of random, capricious forces. You are a participant in an intelligent, ordered system. And within that system, you have agency, you have power. You can change the trajectory of your life through your choices. But most people waste that power. They spend years blaming their parents, the government, the system, the economy, bad luck. And while they do that, while they hand their power over to external factors, they guarantee that nothing will change. Because if you believe you're a victim, you act like a victim. And victims don't transform their lives. The Stoics were the opposite of that. They embraced radical responsibility. Marcus Aurelius was an emperor, yet he never blamed his circumstances for his problems. Epictetus was a slave, yet he never used that as an excuse. Seneca faced exile and betrayal, yet he never played the victim. All of them understood that real power comes from taking full responsibility for your life, no matter what has happened to you. And when you do that, when you stop looking for excuses and start looking for solutions, something almost magical happens. You realize you have far more control than you thought. You can't control whether it rains, but you can control whether you bring an umbrella. You can't control whether people respect you, but you can control whether you act in a respectable way. You can't control outcomes, but you can control effort. Seneca said something powerful. Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. People look at successful individuals and say, "They're so lucky." But they don't see the thousands of hours of work, the countless failures, the relentless discipline. They don't see that person preparing while others were watching TV, that person studying while others were complaining, that person building while others were procrastinating. And that's exactly why bad things happen: to wake you up, to force you to grow, to reveal what you're really made of. Imagine if life were easy all the time. If you got everything you wanted without effort, you'd become weak, complacent, purposeless. You'd be like a muscle that's never been used, atrophied and useless. The Stoics saw every obstacle as a gym for the soul. The heavier the weight, the stronger you become. The greater the challenge, the more you develop your abilities. And eventually, you reach a point where nothing scares you anymore. Not because you've become numb, but because you've become confident in your ability to handle whatever comes your way. Epictetus had a powerful exercise. He said, "Begin each day by telling yourself, 'Today I will meet people who are intrusive, ungrateful, aggressive, deceitful, jealous, and antisocial.' All of this happens because they don't understand what is truly good or bad. But since I have reflected on the nature of good and evil, and I know that nothing that happens can truly harm me, None of these people can hurt me. This isn't cynicism. It's realistic preparation. It's building mental resilience before you need it. It's like a strong immune system. You don't wait until you're sick to start protecting yourself. You build your defenses in advance. And when you do this consistently, when you train your mind to see challenges as opportunities, when you practice responding with wisdom instead of reacting with emotion, you literally rewire your brain. Neuroplasticity isn't just a buzzword. It's your brain's real ability to create new neural pathways based on how you think and act. So every time you choose to see an obstacle as an opportunity, you strengthen that neural pathway. Every time you choose calm over anger, you build that mental muscle, and eventually it becomes who you are. You no longer have to struggle to be resilient. You simply are. Now let's talk about something that might sound contradictory at first, but is absolutely essential to your transformation. The Stoics taught that you should work relentlessly toward your goals, while at the same time remaining completely indifferent to the outcome. Sounds impossible, right? How can you care deeply about something and not care at all? But once you truly understand this, everything changes. Think of an archer. He does everything in his power to hit the target. He trains for years, refines his technique, adjusts his stance, reads the wind, and aims with absolute precision. But the moment the arrow leaves the bow, the result is no longer under his control. A sudden gust of wind can push it off course. A slight tremor can change its path. Even the target itself might move. The wise archer does everything right, and then lets go. He doesn't torture himself with anxiety about where the arrow will land. His job is already done. This is what the Stoics meant by doing your duty without attachment to the fruits of your actions. You give everything you have to the process, but you understand that the final outcome depends on countless variables outside your control. And when you adopt this mindset, something deeply liberating happens. You stop suffering in advance. You stop freezing in fear of failure. You simply act to the best of your ability and accept whatever follows. Marcus Aurelius faced decisions that affected millions of lives. He could send armies into war, pass laws, and decide matters of life and death. Yet he never allowed himself to be crushed by the weight of those decisions. Why? Because he knew he could only control his intentions and his actions. The results depended on countless other forces. So he made the best judgment he could with the information available, acted with integrity, and then accepted the outcome, whatever it might be. Now imagine applying this to your own life. Looking for a job? Give it everything you've got in the interview. Prepare obsessively. Show up confident. Communicate your value clearly. Then let go. If you get the job, great. If you don't, it doesn't mean you weren't good enough. It means other factors were at play, other candidates, internal decisions, variables you'll never see or control. And maybe, just maybe, not getting that job is exactly what clears the path to something better. Trying to build a relationship? Be genuine. Show real care. Do your part to create connection. But don't cling desperately to the outcome. If the other person reciprocates, that's wonderful. If they don't, you keep your dignity and move forward knowing you did your best. You don't need anyone's validation to know your worth. This is what makes you truly unshakable, not arrogance, but a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you're doing your part, regardless of what happens next. And ironically, when you stop being obsessed with outcomes, you often get better ones. Why? Because people can feel desperation. They sense when you need something from them, and that pushes them away. But when you're whole on your own, when you're okay with any outcome, that becomes magnetic. The Stoics also practice something called negative visualization. It's different from obsessing over worst-case scenarios. Instead, you imagine losing the good things you currently have, your health, the people you love, your possessions. Not to become pessimistic, but to cultivate deep gratitude for what you have while you have it. Most people live on autopilot. They have their health and assume it's guaranteed until it's gone. They have loved ones and assume they'll always be there until they aren't. They have stability and resources and assume they always will until a crisis hits. And then come regret, panic, and the painful realization that they didn't appreciate what they had when they could. The Stoics flipped this perspective. Seneca would look at his friends and think, "This might be the last time I see this person." That didn't make him sad. It made every interaction precious. Every conversation mattered. He didn't postpone saying what needed to be said, doing what needed to be done, or expressing the affection that mattered, because he lived with a constant awareness of impermanence. And here's the brutal truth most people avoid. Everything is temporary. Your body will age and eventually fail. The people in your life will leave, or you will leave first. Your possessions will wear out, be lost, stolen, or abandoned when you die. Everything you have right now, absolutely everything, will be gone at some point. This isn't a depressing idea. When you truly accept it, it's one of the most liberating truths there is. Because if everything is temporary, then nothing can really be taken from you. You never truly owned anything in the first place. You were simply given temporary custody. Life loaned these things to you for a while. And when it asks for them back, and it will, you can release them with grace instead of clinging in desperation. Marcus Aurelius often meditated on his own death. He was the most powerful man in the world, yet he reminded himself constantly, "This will end. I will die. All of this will disappear." And instead of paralyzing him, that awareness energized him. It made each day matter. It gave weight to every decision. It pushed him to live with purpose instead of drifting through existence. Now ask yourself this. If you knew for certain that you had only 1 year left to live, how would you live? Would you stay in a job you hate? Keep postponing your dreams? Hold on to grudges? Worry so much about other people's opinions? Of course not. You'd live with urgency, with honesty, with courage. But here's the secret. You don't know how much time you have. It could be a year. It could be 50. It could be tomorrow. So why not live now with that same urgency? Why keep delaying, procrastinating, hiding? The Stoics didn't wait. They lived as if each day was precious, because it is. They treated every moment as if it mattered, because it does. And when you start living this way, when you stop postponing your life for some mythical future where everything is finally perfect, when you accept impermanence and choose to live fully anyway, you change. You become someone no longer ruled by fear, someone who doesn't need guarantees to act, someone who embraces life in all its uncertainty and still finds meaning, purpose, and joy. And now we arrive at the most powerful revelation, the one I promised you from the very beginning. The definitive answer to why bad things happen to you, and this answer will challenge everything you believe about suffering, purpose, and transformation. The Stoics believed in something called Amor Fati, the love of fate. But this wasn't about passively accepting whatever happens. It was something far deeper and more radical. It meant looking at every event in your life, especially the most painful ones, and saying, "I wouldn't change a thing. I would choose to go through it all again, because all of it brought me here. All of it made me who I am." Think about that for a moment. Every betrayal you experienced taught you about loyalty and made you more selective about who you trust. Every failure exposed your weaknesses and gave you the chance to strengthen them. Every loss taught you the value of what truly matters and made you more grateful for what remains. Every moment of loneliness forced you to build a deeper relationship with yourself. Every crisis revealed inner resources you didn't even know you had. If you removed any one of those painful experiences from your story, you would be a different person, and most likely a weaker one, more naive, less prepared for the challenges still ahead. The Stoics understood this. You are not shaped by easy moments. You are forged in hard ones. Gold must pass through fire to be purified. Diamonds are formed under extreme pressure, and you need suffering to become who you are meant to be. So why do bad things happen to you? Because you need them. Because without them, you would remain asleep, comfortable, mediocre. Because the universe, God, nature, whatever you choose to call it, loves you too much to let you stay stagnant. Bad things are not punishments. They are invitations to evolve, calls to wake up, opportunities disguised as obstacles. And here's the part that changes everything. You don't have to wait for something bad to happen in order to grow. You can choose to evolve now. You can voluntarily embrace discomfort. You can intentionally put yourself in challenging situations. You can proactively work on your weaknesses before life forces you to do it in the most painful way possible. This is exactly what the Stoics practiced. Seneca would deliberately live with very little, eating simple food, wearing old clothes, sleeping on the hard ground. Why? To prove to himself that he could survive with far less, to remove the fear of poverty, to train his mind to remain strong under any circumstance. He didn't wait to lose everything to find out whether he could handle it. He prepared in advance. Marcus Aurelius, even as emperor, practiced voluntary discomfort. He constantly reminded himself that everything could be taken away at any moment. He imagined scenarios where he was betrayed, defeated, exiled, not out of pessimism, but out of wisdom. He was building mental resilience before he needed it in real life, and that is exactly what you need to do in 2026 if you want to become unrecognizable. You need to stop waiting for life to force you to grow. You need to actively choose growth. Wake up earlier than necessary. Work out when you don't feel like it. Have the difficult conversations you've been avoiding. Make the call you've been procrastinating. Start the project you keep putting off. Face the fear that's been paralyzing you. Because here is the final truth. Life will force you to grow one way or another. You can choose the voluntary path, where you have some control over the process. Or you can wait for life to choose for you, and it usually chooses the most brutal methods. The choice is yours. But not choosing is still a choice, and usually the worst one. The Stoics were not victims of fate. They were co-creators of their own character. They understood that external events are outside their control, but their response to those events is entirely theirs, and that response is where all transformational power lives. Two people can experience the same tragedy. One is destroyed by it. The other emerges stronger than ever. The difference isn't the event, it's the interpretation and the response. So the next time you ask why bad things happen, remember this. They are not happening to you. They are happening for you, to wake you up, to strengthen you, to show you what you're truly capable of, to transform you from who you are into who you could become. And when you shift that perspective, when you stop resisting suffering and start using it, you become unstoppable. In 2026, you can become unrecognizable. But that requires embracing Stoicism not just as a philosophy, but as a daily practice. Start tomorrow morning. Before checking your phone, before getting distracted by the outside world, take 5 minutes for Stoic reflection. Ask yourself, what is under my control today? How can I act with virtue no matter what happens? What challenges can I voluntarily embrace to become stronger? And when something bad inevitably happens, because it will, pause, breathe. Remember, this is not happening to me. This is happening for me. What lesson do I need to learn? What strength do I need to develop? How can I use this to grow? Then act accordingly. If you've watched until this point, if this message deeply resonated with you, write in the comments, Amor Fati. Those 2 words mean you understand, that you're ready to embrace your destiny, including the hard parts, that you choose to become unrecognizable through Stoic wisdom. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because we'll continue exploring this ancient wisdom that has the power to transform modern lives. Leave a like if this added value for you, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. On the screen right now are 2 videos that perfectly complement what you've learned here. One on applying Stoicism to relationships, and another on practical techniques for building unbreakable discipline. Watch them now, because transformation doesn't happen through passive knowledge. It happens when you go all in, when you fully commit to becoming the best version of yourself. Remember, You are not a victim of circumstances. You are the sculptor of your own character, and the chisel that shapes you is the very challenges you face. Embrace them, use them, become unrecognizable. The power was always within you. Now you know how to access it.